everyone. Welcome to the Elite Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Popple, along with my co-host, William McClellan. What's going on today, Will?
Yo, what's up, Sam? Dude, excited for our guest today. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, who do we got?
Yeah, we got Chad Ostrom, amazing guy, new-ish to the Panhandle area, husband, West Coast native, grew up in the Pacific Northwest, ex-food truck owner and entrepreneur, even though that is bleeding through his blood. So really excited to kind of hear about that on the mobile real estate side. He's currently in new house construction, and what I love about Chad is he's just a go-getter. He's about our age, so I love seeing hungry people. He said he wanted to do 10 flips, never did a flip before, flips 10 in his first year. And now he's analyzing his numbers, and I'm really excited on just talking about the food truck business and talking about flipping, and then now his newest venture, new construction, and why kind of transitioning into a new side of real estate. So without further ado, let's bring on Chad.
Hey,
Chad, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be on the podcast.
Yeah, dude. Man. Thanks so much.
I'm excited.
I feel like
I'm excited to hear about your background and in the food trucks and stuff, and then how you transition all that over to flipping, because I think we have a lot in common there, from going from restaurants to knowing real estate's kind of a great way to make money.
Yeah. It's been an interesting journey for me. It's been wild for sure. So yeah.
Well, sweet. Well, let's let the listeners get to know you a little bit. So tell us a little bit about life before real estate, childhood, college, growing up, first business, who Chad is.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Seattle area. I grew up in Tacoma, Washington. I went to high school at a Christian faith school. It was a small private school in Federal Way. And I ended up going to a college in Kirkland. It was Northwest University. And that place was interesting because I ended up getting a communications degree. And I feel like I don't want to say that it was worthless, but it was, I don't know how you guys feel about college and education and all that stuff, but
we can definitely dive in because this is always a fun one, because Sam has pretty much a go-to when we talk.
Yeah, I always say Will's the educated partner because they kicked me out of college. Will's got an MBA. Me, they told me don't come back.
Yeah, I've heard the CEO say that he had 7 different degrees, and they were like, well, how did you get those degrees? And he's like, well, I've got 7 different people working for me that all have those degrees. So technically I have those degrees.
Yeah.
So
no, exactly. But no, yeah. And we've had so many different guests in the past where some have been highly educated, and some have owned a house before they got their GED. So it's like I said. So there's no one way to be successful is something I've definitely realized in life. There's many paths to get there.
Yeah, well, I think the issue for me was that, just going back to my story, the issue for me was that I graduated college and I was just thinking like, hey, all these jobs are going to come my way. And the other thing was that I had a communications degree, and I realized, oddly enough, when I left, that I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, what is this even for? Like, I barely even know how to communicate after the whole degree. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. I felt like it was just this odd place that I was in when I graduated, and it was tough, man. It was tough for me for sure.
So with that, I think this resonates a lot for our listeners. Either those that are in college, those that are looking to do college, to go back to college, or if they want to, reinvest in themselves through school or through alternative ways. A lot of people are right now, there's things that you can check on YouTube and pop-ups on Google and everywhere about invest in yourself with all of these different courses. And then there's, I wouldn't say quite millions, but tens of thousands of free courses out there. And so
not to mention just YouTube. You know, you can just
Yeah.
watch YouTube videos.
And I'll get to that later, part of my story. But how I actually started the food truck business was listening to the hot dog podcast. So
No
there was
way.
this guy that had all these, followers, and all he talked about was how to find the best locations, how to buy the right hot dog cart, where to get your stuff. And dude, I listened to, hundreds of podcasts of that. That's how I got educated. That's how I made all my money was starting through that, and not really the degree. I think if anything, the degree, it taught me how to learn. It taught me how to study and how to be diligent. But is $70,000 worth that to learn how to do that? I don't know. So
yeah.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about that time period that you were just mentioning, where you felt a little stuck. You thought all these jobs were going to come, and then how did you get transitioned into this podcast that then helped you excel your career as an entrepreneur?
So I graduated, and I just remember that feeling of being like, it was like I'm kind of underplaying it, but it was a really rough time in my life. I just felt like I said, I felt like things were gonna fall into place for me. That's the way my life actually seemed to have always played out. And I remember nothing was falling into my lap. It was weird. So I ended up saying, well, hey, maybe I'll go try a sales job. And honestly, hated sales. I hated the pressure. I worked at a car dealership for like 5 days, and they basically, both of us mutually agreed that it wasn't for me. Also, I was 22 and I didn't know anything about cars. I could probably sell real estate easily because I know so much about, a house now. I know so much about the details, but they basically threw me out there and said, hey, go sell this car or whatever. And I'm just like, dude, I don't know what to sell. And then there was all this pressure. There was all this whole lead system. I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with like the car sales industry, but basically they have a lead system where anytime somebody walks onto the lot, there's 9 guys sitting back waiting to go out and like hound this person.
Sure.
I just hated it.
So what led you to car sales? Because you are now, I think, maybe our 4th or 5th guest. How many do you think, Sam, that started their career in car sales? And it's such a good. We haven't released the episode yet, but we just recorded one with someone who started in car sales and said that the translation is really kind of what propelled them. And we had a nice talk. So we're excited for that episode to drop. But like, what got you interested in that specifically in sales? Was it just because you were feeling like you were in a rut, you weren't finding a job, or like?
Well, I think at the time it was like I was working for Honda, and just the idea, when you're a kid, you get the degree, and you're just like, oh, I want a big name company, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go get a job at Honda, and I work for Honda, and I'm using my degree or whatever, and but yeah, I think it was just I don't know what I liked about it was it was like the more you work was the more you make, and that's what led me to that. I think it was just the concept that I could bust my butt. I've always known that that's something that I can do. I'll outwork. I don't want to say I'll outwork everybody, but I'll work hard. And I wanted a job where it wasn't like, hey, no matter how hard you work, you're just going to get a paycheck.
Sure.
So then I went and started working on. So I started doing car sales. Ended up leaving that, and so I tried a TV sales job, which. What's crazy about those companies was that some of those guys were really making bank, like selling TVs and cars. Like you'd be shocked. They're making, $150,000, $200,000 a year selling TVs.
What is that? I don't think I know. Like, what's the company that you were at, and what?
Video only.
Okay, video only.
Yeah, it was a local company there. I think they had like 3 or 4 locations in the West Coast, but ended up same thing. Like. It was this weird thing for me. Like when I was there, I felt like trapped, and maybe now even talking about it, it's almost like maybe that was like a sign, like that wasn't for me, like get out of there. And I remember I stuck it out it sounds like it was not very long, but for me, it felt like years. I stuck it out for like 30 days and I remember sitting in that place every day, just like trying to get out and trying to stick it through, but also just saying, like I need to get out of here. So
when did you start the food truck?
So basically from there, I ended up getting a window cleaning job because I used to work window cleaning.
Okay.
Ended up kind of excelling in window cleaning, which sounds kind of funny, but my boss ended up promoting me. I got my own truck and I started running my own jobs and everything. And then from there, I was my next thought from there was saying, hey, maybe I should start my own business, my own window cleaning business. And I went and talked to my boss, and my boss was essentially like, no, like you're not starting your own window cleaning business. You're not going to be my competition. And so I started, thinking about other business opportunities, and that's when I started listening to podcasts about, hot dog carts and doing. I like the idea that a hot dog cart is mobile, so I saw a lot of people like start a business and fail, and I like the idea that this cart I can move from place to place. So if the one location sucked, I could go to the next. And
Sure.
also there was a big scene in Seattle where they did Seattle style hot dogs, which was cream cheese and grilled onions. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that on a hot dog,
I have
but
not. No.
is everywhere there.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and ended up buying a hot dog cart. Bought it for about $3,500, and I opened up. It took me about 4 months, 5 months to get started because I was looking for locations, and I was like, I probably had analysis paralysis in the beginning. It was my first business and everything, and so I kind of overanalyzed everything. But finally, I got a location. It was outside of this. You guys know? Are you familiar with Bellevue, Washington?
Yeah. Just a
Yeah,
little.
so it's like all the high rises, a lot of wealth there. And there was one spot where all the food trucks would be once a week, or no, every day of the week they would be there. But in order to be there, you had to pay $200 a day, and I couldn't afford that at the time. So basically, what I did was I found this little alleyway that was on the way to the food trucks, and I talked to it was Diamond Parking at the time. I met with them, and I was just like this little guy saying, "Hey, can I please just sell hot dogs like on your drive or your parking lot there?" And they were like, "Yeah, $400 a month, you can do it." And I'm thinking, sweet, that's like $20 a day, and I'm getting all the same foot traffic as everybody out at the buildings. So I ended up first couple of days, this is like my first day, and I'm excited. I'm like, what's it gonna be like, dude? I get nobody. And it's, dude, when you're out there by yourself and you're sitting there with a hot dog cart that's dinky and you don't know what you're doing, dude, it's not just like nerve wracking, it's like very vulnerable, And all these rich people, there's these CEOs are walking by and looking at you. And I remember on the second day, same thing, barely got anybody. And I went out, I was like handing out samples, and that makes it almost even worse. People are like, dude, this guy's desperate. Like, this food must suck. So, but then all of a sudden, man, fourth day, boom, it was like, I don't know what happened, but everybody caught word that I was there, and I had lines of like 30 people.
What?
And then, yeah,
That's sick.
it was crazy. And so from there,
do you think people got a bite of that dog, and when those samples you gave out, and that's how
dude,
it helped you out?
well, here's the thing: is we had really good product. Like, I made sure that I wasn't going to mess up on my product. The way it looked wasn't very good, but my product was good. I had cream cheese, grilled onions. We had a peanut butter jelly and bacon dog. We had a Hawaiian style hot dog.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was awesome. And then from there, dude, it was like, it just like took off. And I was, for me, graduating college, dude, I was raking it in just by myself, selling hot dogs, pocketing cash every day. And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much that story. And then from there, I got a location at Lowe's, and that was when I really became a legitimate business. I ended up like creating like a permanent spot there, and I talked to the Lowe's store manager, and we kind of finagled our way and broke some rules to where they would let me set up my trailer right at the front door. So it was essentially like I put about $50,000 down and put a trailer there. We started selling burgers, fries, hot dogs.
Dang.
That's when I really like entered into like the food truck business, and my business mind started to really click. I started hiring employees. We got 2 more carts. We were catering for Amazon, Microsoft. Like, it became a pretty big operation. So
Jeez. So tell us a little bit through that trial and error phase, and then that like hyper expansion. You as a business owner, like what were some of the things that were going through your mind, and then how do you manage that for some of the listeners that might be kind of scared of growth or they really want the growth? How did you kind of manage and put that into perspective for someone that might be interested in something like that?
well, first of all, if my buddy's watching this, which I don't know if he ever will, but he was my
You gotta
business
send it to him.
partner.
Send
What's
it to
that?
him. You gotta send it to him.
I know, I'll send it to him. But yeah, we started it together. So well, actually, I started it, and then he kind of hopped in with me, and he was actually my best friend, and
Oh,
still is my
sweet.
best friend. I'm going to see him this weekend. But yeah, he was a big part of the business because I was always kind of like the visionary and the one that was like seeing where I wanted it to go, and we'd be up late night talking about like numbers and what we could do with it. A lot of people here too, like the hot dog stand thing is just, oh, it's just a hot dog stand. But in my mind, I saw this as like, hey, this is the future for me, not just this business, but I'm a business person. And once I kind of got the concept of it, I was like, dude, all businesses are the same. It's just different
Mhm.
products, different processes, different people. And that's what I was like trying to really learn. But yeah, I think when we opened up the truck, there was a lot for me. Like, there's no, and this is why the education system, going back to that, bothers me just a little bit because I had no training for this. I had no training for like the amount of stress when you have 7 employees and they're all kids, they're high school kids, and they all have emotions, and then you got to
Right.
manage like you're like when you sign up. And one of the questions that we could talk about at the end, but you mentioned like one of the books, or the questions was the book that impacted me the most, and one of those was E-Myth. I'm not sure if you guys have ever read that book,
Yeah.
but at the time I was actually selling hot dogs out there in the front at my cart at Lowe's, and this lady came up and handed me that book, and I was like, dude, like, okay, I guess I'll read it. I read it. That's what almost got me to where I was in the food truck business, because it got me to step out of, my role. Because, yeah, like I said, one thing I realized is that when you take over as owner, you're taking over so many different roles. And I didn't realize that until I was in all those roles. And you're getting all these calls from all these different people. And you have to be the visionary. You have to be the one to say, hey, where is it going? You have to be the accountant. You have to be the maintenance person. You have to be the one, actually selling hot dogs, actually, selling burgers, and
In
so
deals with Lowe's and like looking up real estate, trying to look at expansion. Yeah, it's like so many
100%.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chad,
Exactly.
we have so much in common. You are definitely going to have to come have lunch with me at Clean Eats.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah.
Because I can relate to everything you're saying. Having all those employees, managers. I think I had calls earlier today dealing with one thing in Tallahassee and another thing in Shalimar. So
I
I
mean, from what I heard, what you're doing was a lot more than what I'm doing right now, but you know,
it's all the same though, because it's you scale it up, you build out your one team, and then you move on and build out another team, and so
yeah.
like once you can build one team, and and make it run independently of you, it's all the same from there. Um, but
Well, I think that was one of the, sorry to interrupt, but I think that was one of the things that, that enticed me about real estate too was, you know, limited employees. Like it feels like, so I remember in the food truck business, if I wanted to hire like a food truck technician, it was like, these guys are going to charge you up the butt,
Mhm.
and there's few and far between of them. If I want to find an employee for a hot dog stand, or it wasn't a hot dog stand, a food truck. It was essentially like a little food truck. It was like it was hard to find that. But like in real estate, you're like, hey, I need a sheetrock guy, and he's there. And they know what they do, and that's their subs, and they have their differences, but that's what they do. You're 1099ing them, and that takes like a whole nother stress load off when you're just 1099ing them, and you're not liable for them, and like there's just, if there's a bad drywall guy, you call the next one.
Right.
But like if I was out an employee, I was driving up from Tacoma all the way to North Seattle, which is like an hour, and I was working that truck while I was getting calls, dealing with all the other things, because you can't close too. That's the other thing is you don't want to close your business, because that's a huge, and that was a big thing, is like we were Sunday to Sunday, or we were 7 days a week. And, there was like 2 days a week where we wouldn't make very much, but it was just about the concept that people know. It's like a mental thing. People know every time I go to that truck, they're going to be open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's not confusing, because in the beginning we'd be like, hey, let's go to Vegas this weekend, man. Let's go have fun. We did a great, we had a great sales day. Let's go party. We shut down the truck, and then all these people would come when we were gone, and it would just cause inconsistency. So, but yeah, you can get a little off track here.
No, you're good. You did. So we started talking drywall. So we're switching to the real estate a little bit. So
Okay.
anyone early on get you interested in real estate, or what made you start looking at that? From going from food trucks to the real estate.
So yeah, one last story about the food truck, because this sort of transitions to how I got where I was. The district manager, I happened to be friends with the district manager at Lowe's. And one day he came up to me and basically said, or actually he didn't come up to me. We had just been talking a bunch. And then one day I got a call, and he basically told me, he said, look, I want you to open up at every single Lowe's north of South Seattle.
Oh my God.
So I was with my dad. Like, I think a little tear came out. I was like so happy.
That's
I've been working so hard, and I knew what that meant. This was huge.
Yeah.
So, and that was like 10 stores, and these stores, I could see their foot traffic. It was crazy. But anyways, so I ended up following through. I built this second trailer, went to go set it up, and I get another call from him and says, look, man, I got some bad news. And dumb me, never signed a contract, didn't do anything. I just took this guy by his word. And he said, look, man, like, we still want you to open up, but we can't give you a long-term lease. And, at that time, I had already been burnt out by the business. I was ready to move on. I was losing employees. Seattle, I'm not sure if you know about how Seattle was doing, but it was rough in the area. People were getting their businesses literally burned down, like my friends and stuff. But anyway, so I went to go say, hey, maybe I need to open up a different business. I went to go open up, met with this guy to do a coffee business. And, I was talking to him about renting this place, and he came up to me. He said, look, man, like, I know you. He said, you need to own. And I started thinking, what are you talking about, man? I'm trying to rent this place from you. He said, no, you need to own real estate, and that kept ringing in my ears. And I actually ended up not following through with that contract. And that's when I started shifting. I said, okay, well, I'm going to look into commercial real estate now. I'm going to try to buy the land for my food business. And I looked into that in Seattle, and you probably already know, millions of dollars, just risky. So my next step was to, I ended up buying a duplex. We bought a duplex right before the COVID boom. Actually, it was right when everything was booming. And that was in Tacoma, Washington. It was a big 1,300 square foot per side duplex.
Nice.
And it was on discount, like now I follow the 70% rule when I buy, but like at the time I'm like, oh, I'm getting 10 grand off. I bought a super deal, I ended up buying a duplex.
We all have our first deal versus what we do now. So yeah.
Yes. So actually, for the listeners, we always like to kind of stop. So there was a couple things you mentioned earlier, like 1099ing employees. And versus having full staff, kind of, and that was a big thing that kind of attracted you to real estate, because lower employee level. Now you just mentioned, okay, well, I'm transitioning, and I'm able to have this growth. So let's take a little bit of time just to kind of go over those things for the listeners. And then we'll jump right back in.
Okay, so what is your question? I'm sorry.
Just sometimes whenever we go over things, like some of the listeners, they don't necessarily know what 1099ing an employee. I mentioned that earlier, and then just diving a little bit deeper into where you were going right there.
Yeah, so the whole 1099 thing is, as soon as you have a W-2 employee, W-2 is just like a standard paycheck where you're a legal employee. As an employer, you have to follow all of the laws as far as uh what's the business and oper or not business and operating, what's
Like
the insurance,
comp
workers' comp, all those
and
things. You have a ton of liability,
yeah.
and they're essentially, a 1099 employee is somebody who, when you hire, they have their own tools, they have their own trade, and so when you're hiring them, they're taking all the liability. It's in their business name, and yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to head that direction, because number one, like in real estate, you don't have as many employees. Like he's probably Clean Eats, I'm sure you have tons of employees. That's just how like the restaurant business and a lot of businesses are. Whereas real estate, and that's where I was kind of getting with this duplex too, is we bought this duplex and we started renovating it, and basically did the whole like the house hacking thing where you live in one side, you fix it up yourself, and it was me and my girlfriend, now wife, who, probably that's how I found out she was the one for me, because she saw all the ugly sides of me, man. Like I'd come home from the food truck and we'd be working till 2, 3 in the morning, tearing up walls. And I didn't even know, I couldn't even change a freaking light bulb, and I was figuring it out all out on YouTube. But it was
No way.
extremely, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No way. That's amazing. And then you also said that you got a discount, like $10,000 off, but now it wouldn't even be close to the 70-30 rule. So kind of talk about that as you're in
Yeah.
there putting walls out and stuff at 2 a.m. How can you kind of mitigate that if I'm a newer investor, and I'm trying to follow this maybe 70-30 or some other things that I might be hearing on some podcasts, but I'm not exactly sure what that is.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And like, when you first start, like my advice to someone who's first starting is, if I'm like some sort of expert, this was like, 4 years ago. But like my advice to someone who's first starting is, like, I still think like you should just go for it, like you're probably, if you're looking to like buy and hold in the long run, I don't think you're really gonna mess up, and I think like that was like one thing for me starting, was just when you're first starting, you have this barrier here of like, okay, here's me, and then here's this whole other freaking scary real estate world. And like for me, that's how I learned, man. I just freaking jump into it. And yeah, I got super lucky on that one, because it was right before, everybody was saying, oh, you're buying too high, and then it went up like 20%,
Oh my God.
like the
I
next
love
year.
that.
So I got super lucky, and I also did the Burr method on that, which is the Burr method, for listeners, is buy, rent, rehab, refinance, and repeat. So basically, what you're doing is you're buying it at a discount, which I thought it was a discount. I just got lucky because the market went up. But then I rehabbed it myself. I made it all nice and new, and then I upped the rents. So basically, now the value of the property went up by close to 25% just by what I did with my hands. And it's like called forced appreciation. And then essentially after that, I did went to the banks and I said, hey, here's the new value of the house, and the banks will always give you 70 to 75% the value of your piece of real estate. And so that's what they did for me. They gave me, I was actually able to get 80%, which
Nice.
was yeah, I thought that was normal at the time. And I did some things like to get that loan, because I did a traditional Fannie Freddie Mae loan, and we ended up doing it where I was a W-2 employee in my own company. So I looked like, and my wife was my HR person. I probably shouldn't be saying this on camera.
No, I think this is a good strategy on how you can apply and make loans and things like that work, and share as much as you're comfortable with. But yeah, I think that's a great strategy. Like when you are living in a property that you're managing, there's a lot of benefits into that. Not only tax benefits, but then also a ton of monetary benefits that you can put back into the home, or increase the amount for the cash out refinance and take out more money to allow you to do more projects and things like that. So no, that's super smart.
And then the other thing I like about it is like the duplex model. Like I'm just a huge proponent for the duplex in general. I think it's like for someone even like me right now, like that's the direction I want to go. Like I almost, a lot of people say like fourplexes, but I haven't really crossed into the 4 and 8s and like the big multifamily yet. But like just doing the duplex, is usually if you can get the right deal, your one side will pay for most of your mortgage, maybe not all of it, and then the other side will be cash in your pocket. And I think for somebody starting, man, like why buy a single family home? Find a home that has a little mother-in-law in it, so that you have a little cushion. You're not really going to mess up if you buy something like that, especially because you're always going to have that income, And now, even now, mine's, I'm on a 2.9% loan, and the rents are $3,000 per side. Like this thing is like keeping like that paid me a full salary, and it's gonna pay me that hopefully for the rest of my life,
No, dude,
so yeah. So did you end up doing any more stuff up in Washington, or when did you come to Florida?
Yeah, so then that's when it all clicked for me. I basically was like, real estate is the way to go. Like I barely did 4 months of work, and I was like, this food truck game I put 8 years into, and I was like, dude, real estate, this is the crap, the good stuff. Anyways, I don't know if we're allowed to cuss on the podcast, but
no worries, all good.
Anyways, but yeah, so I ended up buying. I went to Spokane because I was like, okay, maybe Spokane, Washington, which is Eastern Washington, because the market was a little better over there. So I bought 2 more single family homes that I was going to buy and do Airbnb, which I did. Also finagled some loans by, for live-in loans, owner occupant loans.
So can I stop you there? Because a question that we do often get, and I do like to bring it up, going from your first purchase, your first deal into that next one, what was that timeline like? And then kind of how'd you get that financing like you were about to dive into?
Yeah. So after the first deal, it was essentially, I wasn't out of money, but a lot of my money was into the property. Actually, no, now that I remember, when I got that refi, I got a lot of money back.
Nice.
And that's the nice advantage about doing the buy and rent, rehab, refinance, repeat, because of the repeat part, because you can just keep doing it. And maybe you don't get the super deals, but you get to literally recycle your money. So yeah, I do remember getting money, and then, but then I took that money, and also I was making money from the food truck business at the time. And I bought a place in Spokane where I actually proposed to my wife in, which was awesome. Super awesome. Very memorable there. But yeah, I put a big chunk down, did 20% down, did an investment loan, debt service coverage ratio loan, which is more of I don't know if you want me to explain it, but it's more of like
our loan. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's like an investment loan, basically, where it's not the traditional government-backed Fannie, Freddie, Mae. It's almost like private. I don't even know how it works, to be honest. It's like privatized almost, where you're not going to go through as many loops, and they're basically going to look at the property and say, hey, does this property cash flow? And then they give you a loan based on that. And usually you're going to have to put 20 to 30% down on it, or sometimes, actually, I don't know anybody that does 10%, but
yeah, 20 and 30 is typical.
I do remember in the beginning, I was so gung-ho about trying to get the least amount down as possible on a property that I could keep, because I was like, well, I could do 10 of them and only put 10 grand down on each property. But in the end, like, I feel like it's always better just for me personally, to just, maybe in the long run not, but like, for me personally, just 20% down, eliminate, when you put 20% down, you have no private mortgage insurance on the property, and so that's a huge expense. So I was a big proponent of that. But anyways, so yeah, I bought that one. And then I kind of finagled my way into the next one. Is just like what I was talking about, where I said, hey, I moved. I told the next, I wanted to do an owner occupied loan in this other house, even though I was really gonna rent it out for Airbnb.
And as long as you have the intention of living there,
the intent to live there, yeah.
You are completely fine on that. Life changes happen. So
yeah, and I think that's what happened. Is really I had I did have the intention of living there, but also kind of like we'll see where it goes.
Sure.
So I ended up doing that, and I got a loan within two weeks after getting my owner occupied loan for the other one, which was like unheard of. Everybody's like, you got to wait 6 months to a year. But I wrote a letter. I said, hey, we moved. Like, there's nothing I can do. We moved. Can you get me in? And they approved me. So I did like 5% down on that one, and
nice.
And it was a low mortgage, but this was a big house that was not really built right. It was on a ton of land. It's not ideal for something like if you're trying to be an investor and like travel and have something that's, not going to cause you problems,
Mm-hmm.
And it was on septic and everything, and ended up doing Airbnb. We crushed it on Airbnb there, like making tons of money. We were doing some nights $2,000 a night.
Oh my gosh!
That was like super prime time, but I mean we had 15 guests in there, so we had eight queen beds, I think, that we had in there, and eventually got kind of sick of Airbnb there, and had to put a long-term tenant. Had a terrible situation with the tenant. My house was on the news. There was a shooting, and they fled into the garage, and that was my tenant. And this is what gets me to my next story of why I moved to Florida to start real estate, was because there was, I'm on the phone with the sheriff saying, hey man, like there's a fugitive in my garage, and they said we cannot legally go in that garage. I could see it on my cameras. They had 6 cop cars all around, and they sat there for days because they weren't legally allowed to go in because of the laws in Washington State for tenants.
What?
Yeah. So eventually me and my wife just sat there and just thought of all these different things we could say. And I don't remember what we said. I think we said we saw a weapon, even though we didn't. But we ended up going in there, or they ended up busting in there, and there was a stolen car in there. His friend had been shot, and he brought him in there, and there was like homeless, like there was like those tubs, barrels, and people were having fires in there, dude. It was bad, man. And I think that was my like, okay, because I had heard horror stories already, but I was like, yeah, that's not gonna happen to me, I'm good. So, but then it did, and I said, you know what, long term, man, maybe Seattle and Washington State's not the smartest move for me. So
yeah, if you look up landlord friendly versus landlord unfriendly states, Washington's high up on the unfriendly list for landlords.
Wow.
Yeah. So is that what made you decide to look where it was more landlord friendly, or how did you settle on and come to Florida?
Well, and I didn't mean to I don't want to make it about politics, but I was really just kind of like anything but a blue state right now. And me and my wife both had the idea that said, hey, we can go anywhere we want in the country. Let's just choose something that's awesome. And so we packed up everything in her little Honda Civic, and we said, let's just freaking go to Florida. And my buddy, that same buddy who was in business, he moved to Jacksonville, and I was up to here in my car with stuff that we crammed, and we literally, locked everything in this little closet in one of our rentals in Puyallup, Washington, which is a duplex as well. And we just drove, and we accidentally drove through Pensacola, and then we just were like, we just basically stayed. And I didn't really know much about the market, but I did know I really liked the people here, and that was the big one for me, was the people and the beaches. And the small town vibes was really cool for me. So,
dude, that's cool. That is sweet. I cannot wait to dive into the next episode about life today, like just driving driving across the country, and then just like stopping in Pensacola. I think that's awesome. So, yeah, no doubt. And this has been a fun episode. Lots of information already diving in, just getting just getting to know Chad and everything that he's already done. You guys can tell he's been in a dozen different businesses, actively just crushing all different types of entrepreneurship. So as we dive a little bit deeper in the next episode, yeah, make sure that you like and subscribe, and thanks to Clean Eats for allowing us to do these episodes. And man, we'll see you guys in part 2.
See you guys there.